Here I present to you 9 copper golems. How did I amass this large child workforce? Well, let me show you. One van, I already have more than enough copper golems than I'll ever need. In Minecraft's upcoming drop update thing, they're adding the copper golem, tools, and armor. I like these features in their own right. Fast storing is a much better use for the copper golem compared to Tallon and some pressure plates. I don't really mind the tools and armor, but I do believe they need something a little extra. An interaction of any kind with lightning would be good.
Don't have the ball.
But as cool as these features are, will they finally make copper a worthwhile ore that players are going to consistently mine, similar to the likes of coal and iron? No. No, it doesn't. Players are going to mine it for like 1 minute now, and then it's back to being ignored. You see, the problem that copper faces isn't just one of low uses. Just talking number-wise, it has more uses than diamond and netherite. The problem is just how much of it there is. It's simple supply and demand. Copper has pretty mediocre demand, and it's the most plentiful ore in the game. Humbly, of course. If we kindly consult the graphs, you'll see here that copper is very large, even ignoring dripstone caves, and it isn't at a Y level where stone rarely spawns, nor does it have that dumb, reduced to air exposure thing. Each blob of copper has like 15 ores, and like an actual vein has like 1,000. But the biggest thing here is that without fortune, a single copper ore block can give the player 2 to 5 raw copper. That's an average of 3.5. The only other ores that come close to that number are redstone and lapis, which, if we consult the graph again, are much rarer than copper. And side note, lapis is probably in a worse state than copper. I just fucking hate enchanting. Anyways, this is so extreme that like I actively ignore copper in the early game because of how much it assaults my inventory. Literally andesite on crack. 2 blobs of copper and I have more copper than I'll ever need. Here is everything copper can craft that has a functional use outside of aesthetics. Craft all these items once, it takes 77 ingots, 27 of which is just a copper bulb. 4 copper bulbs here actually. Here's how long it takes me to get 77 raw copper. Most of these things players are going to craft once or a couple of times. The spyglass literally doesn't have durability. Even the new copper pickaxe. After the first time, players only craft it after it breaks or they lose it somehow. Which isn't that common? But who cares, you'll probably get enough copper for a pickaxe from 1 ore. Alright, how do we fix this? But before that, do you think it's fucked up that nevertheless is 1 word? Anyways, to the actual video. Number 1, lower the supplies. Please, fucking calm down. I believe the best way to go about this is to lower amount of raw copper each copper ore gives you. We have 3.5, the current average, and here I multiply it by 4/9. We'll get to why I chose that number later. Look at that, 1.5 is the new average. This means without fortune, copper ore will give 1 to 3 raw copper. This will make it so that players actually have to mine more than 1 blob of copper to get every functional use they need out of the ore. Just like every other ore in the game, it's not that foreign of a concept. And that 10 stacks of raw copper no longer just appear in my inventory while mining. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, I'm giving birth right now. Chat, type 1 if you're giving birth while watching this. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, hey, wouldn't this make a building for a large assortment of copper blocks more time consuming? Well, Buster, let me introduce you to quartz. You might know it, the white stains all over the nether walls. Pretty similar to copper having way too much supply compared to its pretty mediocre demand. And much like copper, it's a building block. Here's how you craft a block of copper. And here's how you craft a block of quartz. So you see why I multiplied the average by 4 nines now, right? I don't know why it wasn't like this from the beginning. Quartz was already in the game as a blueprint when copper was added. It's probably the reason why raw copper rates are so fucked. Only thing that would need to change its recipe would be, ironically enough, the copper chest. Since now the copper golem costs 4 copper now. We'll make the chest cost like 3. And maybe the copper door recipe has to change because it's a decorative block. And its recipe uses ingots. But I don't know, man, maybe just like double the amount of doors it gives you. Another effect of this change is making alternative ways to get raw copper and ingot more efficient to get copper blocks. By killing drowned and... What do you mean that's the only one? It doesn't even spawn in a single structure? One weird thing about quartz blocks is that you can't turn them back into quartz. I don't know, can I do that? Please? Anyways, lower the rate of copper birth. God, I love giving birth. Why is this the best? But this won't fix copper alone. What copper really needs is a sink. No, not that type of... Wait, what the fuck is that? You see, sinks are uses for a certain material that makes you want to use the material over and over again. Think smelting and torches for coal, threading for emeralds, and enchanting for lapis. But, fuck enchanting. I fucking hate enchanting, so lapis can go fuck itself. But how do we add a sink to copper? First, we gotta make it something that the player wants to constantly dump copper into, keeping up with the surplus of copper the player acquires. Secondly, it must be useful to everybody that encounters copper. So, like, every survival player. You know, I kind of brushed off copper as a building block in this video. You know, I built something out of copper myself. And I kind of think copper as the building ore. And this association was the inspiration for my idea. I know we're going to get the copper golem, but I'm looking towards another mob vote mob. No, not you. Your hand. The crab claw was an item you originally get from the crab that would increase your block placing range by a certain amount. But now instead of flying hopelessly around the overworld trying to find a mangrove swamp, or using chunk base, you can now craft it using this recipe. And it's like a copper ultra hand thing now. You might be saying, hey, won't this be another copper thing you craft once every 2 years like the spyglass? Which, damn man, let me get to it, calm down! For demonstrated purposes, the copper extendo arm thing will be represented as an orange bundle. In its default state, when in the offhand, it will increase the player's reach by 1 block, increasing from the default 4.5 blocks in survival to 5.5 blocks. But if you put some ingots in it, increase the range again by 1 to 6.5. Then the copper block to 7.5. And then finally the copper bulb to 8.5. The exact numbers can change whether people think the item is over or underpowered. It's just the general idea that matters. The reason why players want to constantly mine copper for the arm is that the arm will consume the needed copper items to place blocks at longer ranges. For example, if a player places a block 7 blocks away, a copper block stored inside the arm will be consumed. The arm will only consume the least valuable copper item that is needed to place a block at a certain range. There should be multiple tells saying, hey, if you place a block from here, a copper bulb will eat shit and fucking die. Like, if your cursor is hovering over a faraway block, the block will become a different hue of orange depending on which copper item will be consumed. Or maybe the item that will be consumed can physically appear on the arm, like in a little compartment or something. And it should make a weird electric noise when you consume copper, kind of showing how this thing canonically works. This feature will hopefully be used by basically every type of survival player and make them want to obtain copper. Also blaze rods and redstone as well, since the bopper bulb recipe. Cool for them, I guess. Because, you know, in block placing game, something that helps you place blocks might be pretty useful. I don't know, man. It probably is useful, you know. Builders and redstoners will get use out of this, obviously. But explorers and more combat-focused players will get use out of the feature too. No, that does not mean the copper fucko hand will increase the player's attack range. No! I want this to be primarily a building tool. I feel like players kinda underestimate how useful placing blocks is for exploring. especially in caves or the Nether. Also, you can pretty easily just box in every enemy in the game, aside from like 3, just by mashing the right click button. Also consider you can place down stuff like the liquids and cobwebs, and this might be a pretty decent combat tool. So yeah, that's my 2 ideas on how to fix copper. Decreasing the amount of copper the game gives you, and giving copper a new job for being sacrificed to the claw. If you want to talk to me about my suggestions, just type in the comment section below. I have like 2 subscribers, I'll probably see it. And if you're so kindly, can you please increase that number for me? Thank you. And if you want to yell at me in real life, I'll be in the Yally section of your local bookstore. So yeah, I guess I'll go back to my little hole now. See ya.